What's up, comrades? My original intent tonight was to watch a documentary about the Cu Chi tunnels because tunnels are very relevant in today's discourse around revolution and armed struggle and all that good, spicy stuff. But I was reminded that today marks the anniversary of the October Revolution. We distinguish between the February and October Revolution because, like, there were a shitload of revolutions in Europe during this period, but the most important, undoubtedly, is the October Revolution, the revolution that set the stage for some of the greatest successes of the 20th century. You look at every communist revolution that's taking place today, the Philippines, India, Turkey, um, it all traces back to what happened that night in Petrograd, currently known as St. Petersburg, because after the um, after the return of the capitalist imperialist order full force in the 1980s, all of the communist names were changed to their original Tsarist names. So it was Petrograd, then it was Leningrad, and then it went back to St. Petersburg. Um, BRG, how are you doing today, homie? Oh, I'm well. I'm well. So let's watch this. This is October 10 Days That Shook the World. Um, it's also a book written by an American journalist named John Reed. Highly recommended reading. It is the basically the on the ground comprehensive account of the events of this period. Yes, I'm still kind of sick. I'm still kind of sniffling, but I owe you all content because I love my fans and I love those who have learned from me, and I've loved those who I have learned from. So, this was made by a guy named Sergei Eisenstein, very well known Soviet filmmaker. He put out a lot of stuff. I will undoubtedly be watching more of his stuff in the future. But let's get to it. This is cool. Many participants of the revolution, Red Guards, sailors and soldiers, appear in the film. Among them is Nikolai Podvolsky, one of the leaders of the armed uprising. I did not know that. So they've actually got people that participated in this struggle and participated in the revolution, taking part in this film. Also, this was right after the conclusion of the Russian Civil War. Like, people think that everything was over after the Winter Palace was taken. Like, no, there was a bloody civil war. America actually invaded. America and several other countries actually invaded the nation Soviet Union, tried to restore the Tsar and his family. The Tsar was pretty much dead, but tried to restore claimants to the Romanov throne. So America did not like the Bolshevik Revolution very much. America doesn't like revolution very much at all. When the film was made, Leningrad added streets, the buildings, the Winter Palace, the corridors of the Smolny. The Smolny was basically the headquarters of the Bolshevik Revolution, the Bolshevik Party. It was a girls' school for nobility, if I recall correctly, but the Bolsheviks took it over and occupied it, and it was used as a sort of headquarters during the days of the revolution. The corridors of the Smolny were the same as in that fateful year. Thus, October 1917 renders a stirring eyewitness account of the early days of the revolution. Dmitri Shostakovich, a very well-known Soviet composer. This film is dedicated to the Petrograd proletariat, heroes of the October Revolution. Also, the calendar changed. They call it the October Revolution because they were still going by the old calendar, but the revolution actually, like the taking of the Winter Palace, actually took place on November 7th, 1917. A quote, it says, "We have the right to be proud that to us fell the good fortune of the beginning, the building of the Soviet state, and by doing so, opening a new chapter in the history of the world." Vladimir Ulyanov, also known as Lenin. Many of the Bolsheviks did not use their real names. They used what were called cadre names, basically noms de guerre, war names. So Lenin's real name was Ulyanov. Stalin's real name was Jugashvili. He was Georgian, not from Georgia, the United States, from Georgia, the country in the Caucasus. Trotsky, his name was Bronstein, so on and so forth. Yay! 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 Well, this is important. You've got soldiers with rifles, you've got workers with their tools, and you've got peasants with sickles. Like, have you wondered why the communist symbol is the hammer and sickle? Because it represents the unity of the proletariat and the peasantry. Of course, in the United States, we don't have a peasantry really. I guess the argument can be made that our sharecroppers in the South were peasants, but we don't have really have sharecroppers anymore in the South. That system went out with the combine and the harvester. So, but like, yeah, I guess the argument can be made that my ancestors, who were formerly enslaved African people, were America's peasantry for over 100 years. But we don't have a peasantry anymore. So I don't know what the new symbol would be. I mean, it's like become ingrained into people's minds that communism is hammer and sickle. So I don't know what can we replace it with, a keyboard and a Starbucks cup. I mean, baristas are proletarian, and judging from their strong union activity, they are an advanced sector of the American working class. So I don't know, but it would confuse people if we just changed the hammer and sickle. So I guess we should keep it for a little bit. So February is when the czar was overthrown. Look at how they massacred that fucking statue. So they're showing soldiers on the front lines of the Eastern Front in World War One. Not enough people talk about like the role that soldiers played in the Bolshevik Revolution. Like there had been very strong work, agitational and propaganda work done by the Bolshevik Party um, among the troops. Like these weren't the troops that you think of when you think of like American imperialism. Okay, like these guys in many cases had no shoes, they had no ammunition for their rifles. In many cases, they didn't even have rifles. So these guys didn't want to be there. Like they were fucking miserable. You got to wrap your feet up with fucking old rags. Like, and you're fighting a war for what, the Tsar, so that he could teach his cousin Wilhelm a lesson. So soldiers played an extremely important role in the Bolshevik Revolution because like they didn't want to be there. They did not want to be fighting. They wanted to go home. They wanted to tend to their farms. They wanted to tend to their families like everybody does. And you have this asshole, this incompetent prick of a Tsar, Nicholas II. And then you have the incompetent pricks in the provisional government who are like, no, you must go fight. Like, for what? Like, how does this benefit us in any fucking way? So, a lot of people think that when you have a revolution in an imperialist country like Imperial Russia or like the United States, you have to get the soldiers on your side. But the difference between Imperial Russia and the United States is that the United States has an all volunteer professionalized army, and Imperial Russia did not. But is it still important to do organizational and agitational propaganda work among both current and former soldiers? Yeah, because that training is important. And they're still part of the masses. Like people join the military for a variety of reasons. That's why I laugh at people who are like, "Oh, soldiers are all cops." I'm like, "Yeah, the officer corps certainly, career military, like some asshole who's been a staff sergeant for 25, 30 years. Yeah, he's probably not going to be very receptive to the good word of communism. But like the dude from the hood or the dude from the trailer park who joined just so that he could get health insurance and have an opportunity to go to college. Like, yeah, I mean, we shouldn't begrudge them that, but we should also make sure that they are critical of the role that they played in oppressing people all around the world. And in many cases, especially during the Vietnam War, but the Vietnam War was a war fought by conscripts, um, soldiers played a very, very heavy role in helping to end that war. Like in Vietnam, they were you had people fragging their officers, you had people leaving, like deserting, you had people staging riots on base and in the field. Shit went down in the Nam. So is that going to happen in future American imperial conflicts? Like, who's to say? Are they going to bring back the draft? Who knows? They might. We didn't think that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade, but they did. Nobody knows what the future holds. This appears to show the Russian troops fraternizing with the Germans. Those helmets, those are called Pickelhaube. So they're fraternizing with the Germans because like neither one of these troops wanted to be there. Neither one of these forces wanted to be there, and that's why they, in the military, they strictly forbid fraternization with the enemy, because they don't want you to realize that your enemies are the guys that sit in the lovely offices wearing the lovely uniforms with gold, braid, and medals abounding, while you're slogging through the mud, stabbing each other and shooting each other to pieces with machine guns over shit that really has nothing to do with you. They don't want you to realize that you have more in common with a so-called enemy soldier than you do with your officers or the people who boss your officers. The provisional government will continue to honor the commitments made to the Allied powers. So basically, they're going to keep Russia in the war, but the average Russian soldier doesn't want to be in the war, and the average Russian peasant or factory worker doesn't want to go to the fucking war. So that's a contradiction. So the Russian Revolution took place during World War One. So the Allied powers were France, Britain, and eventually the United States. And if I recall correctly, Belgium. The Central Powers were Germany and Austria-Hungary. Russia was one of the Allied powers as well. So, oh yeah, the Ottoman Empire was also part of the Central Powers. So it wasn't the Axis. The Axis was until World War II. So basically, you basically had Britain, France, and Serbia and Russia ganging up on Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, the German Empire, and that's it. So, yeah, it was just the alliances that replaced during World War One. Everybody always forgets Bulgaria. I had a Spanish professor from Bulgaria. And like this film came out in 1928, right? So this shit, this hunger, this cold, I mean, it's fucking Russia. Like you need coal to live. If you don't have coal, you're gonna die. If you don't have wood, you're gonna die. So like thousands, tens of thousands of people starved to death and froze to death because of mismanagement and corruption and waste. Like Russia, still to this day, is one of the most corrupt countries on the face of the earth. So, like, this shit was real for people. Like, it mentioned in the beginning that, like, these people had actually been through this shit. Like, they were basically replaying stuff that was happening 10 years before. Like, this would be us replaying the Ferguson uprising. Like, a lot of us in St. Louis, we're out there. So, it would this is basically what that's like. People homeless, sleeping on the streets. Hunger and war. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I wonder who's coming. Santa Claus? It's Santa! It's Santa! Oh, it's Lennon. It's short, bald Santa in a wrinkled suit. Ho ho ho! We're going to kill the Tsar, kids. Ho 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 ho! I wonder if people are still tripping off my joke I made. I think it was during my Hinkle stream where I was talking about Lenin hating Russians. I think he had made some off-color comments, but I did not mean to imply that Lenin helped lead the revolution just to do bad things to Russians. Lenin did good things for the Russian people, but some people can't take a joke. When you're talking about a joke like Hinkle, the only opportunity that you have is really to make jokes. I don't know what I just said. I don't think you know what I just said either. Anyways, back to the film. some people would call this wrecking. Like, why did Lenin say that there should be no support for the provisional government? Because it kept, this isn't real footage, this is acting. But Lenin called for no support to the provisional government because at this station, hold on, let me pull him up. He released what we would call the April thesis. Um, so this is Wikipedia, but they're basically like copy and pasted from Marxist.org. So the April theses were one, first and foremost, condemning the provisional government as bourgeois and urging no support for it, as the utter falsity of all its promises should be made clear. He condemned World War I as a predatory imperialist war and the revolutionary defensism of foreign social democratic parties, calling for revolutionary defeatism. So, revolutionary defensism is basically saying that, um, regardless of what happened, the idea that these foreign social democrats were propagating, who were in the Second International, was that we should defend the fatherland. Like, this was the reason that there was a split between revolutionary communist forces and the social democrats of the Second International, because they were like, we have the right to defend our country. So this would be like the Democrats or various socialist parties that tail them in the United States. Yes, they still exist, saying that we should send troops to Israel. Or shit, it's akin to an Israeli socialist party calling for defense of the fatherland against the Palestinian people. So down with revolutionary defensism. The only correct line for a communist formation or a communist individual is revolutionary defeatism. Our goal is to turn imperialist wars into revolutionary civil wars. Two, assert that Russia is passing from the first stage of the revolution, which, owing to the insufficient class consciousness and organization of the proletariat, placed power in the hands of the bourgeoisie. So basically, what Lenin was saying with the second thesis is that because the proletariat didn't have its shit together, I mean, yeah, it was ready to turn out to the streets, but the bourgeoisie was ready to take power from the Tsar and his nobles. Um, so it's time to move to the second stage, which must place power, hello, Nate, in the hands of the proletariat and the poorest sections of the peasants. Three, recognize that the Bolsheviks are a minority of most of the Soviets against a bloc of all the petty bourgeois opportunist elements, from the social cadets and the socialist revolutionaries down to the organizing committee, Chkadze, Tseretelli, etc., Steklov, whatever, who have yielded to the influence of the bourgeoisie and spread that influence among the proletariat. So basically, he's saying that we have to unite the poorest peasants and the proletariat, the workers who have nothing to lose but their chains, against representatives of the petty bourgeoisie, against representatives of the regular bourgeoisie, and against representatives of other reactionary forces, because this is a struggle for power. This is a political struggle. What did you miss? We're watching Eisenstein's October 1917, 10 Days That Shook the World. Four, I'm going through Lenin's April theses because we got to the Finland station scene. Calls for a parliamentary republic not to be established and calls this a retrograde step. He calls for a republic of workers, agricultural laborers, and peasants' deputies throughout the country from top to bottom. Five, he calls for the abolition of the police, the army, and the bureaucracy, and for the salaries of all officials, all of whom are elective and displaceable at any time, not to exceed the average wage of a competent worker. So, congressmen, senators in the United States, they make far more than you make as an average, ordinary, everyday worker. Mayors, all these people, they're just pigs eating at the public trial. Yet, as anybody who lives in a major city like St. Louis or Chicago can attest, these people really do nothing. They don't care about how the cities are governed. They just care about how much they can graft and how much they can send off to their buddies or their family. So, like I said, Russia is still an extremely corrupt country. It's even more corrupt at the time of the October Revolution. So we have to We have to rein in all of that waste, and we have to cap salaries. Like, there's no reason why you should be making more than an average, ordinary, everyday worker. Calls for the weight of emphasis in the agrarian program to be shifted to the Soviets of agricultural laborers' deputies, confiscation of all big land in the states, and nationalization of all land in the country. The land to be disposed of by the local Soviets of agricultural laborers and peasants' deputies. The organization of separate Soviets of deputies of poor peasants. The setting up of a model farm on each of the large estates, ranging in size from 100 to 300 desiatines, according to local or other conditions, and the conditions of the local bodies, under the control of the Soviets of Agricultural Laborers' Deputies and for the public account. Calls for the immediate union of all banks in the country into a single national bank and the institution of control over it by the Soviet of Workers' Deputies. States that it is not our immediate task to introduce socialism, but to bring social production and distribution of products at once under the control of the Soviets of Workers' Deputies. What were the tasks of the Bolshevik Party? Immediate convocation of a party congress, alteration of the party program, mainly, on the question of imperialism and the imperialist war, on our attitude towards the state and our demand for a commune state, amendment of our out-of-date minimum program, and change of the party's name. Lenin notes that instead of social democracy, whose official leaders throughout the world have betrayed socialism and deserted to the bourgeoisie, the defensists, and the vacillating Kautskyeites, we must call ourselves the Communist Party. The name change would dissociate the Bolsheviks from the Social Democrats of Europe, who supported the participation of their nation in World War I. Lenin first developed this point in his 1915 pamphlet, Socialism and War, when he first called the pro-war Social Democrats social chauvinists. And finally, calls for a new revolutionary international, an international against the social chauvinists and against the center. This later became the Comintern, the Third International, which was formed in 1919, 2 years after the revolution. So that's what Lenin is throwing down at Finland Station. Also, I know that you all are like noticing the size of the crowd in this film. Um, and I know you all are thinking like, how the fuck can we get a crowd together like that? Well, keep in mind, um, years ago, like in the 1910s, workers generally lived within walking distance of each other. Like there were no cell phones, there was no cars, there were street cars, but there were like no, like America is probably the hallmark country of bourgeois individualism because after the 1950s, 1960s, everybody has their own personal car. Like if you get in a wreck in the fucking car, you'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills, but you'll get another fucking car. That's one right that you have in America, the right to have a fucking car and spew fumes into the air and help kill us all. In Russia, back then, there was nothing like that. So we had a more communal type of thing going on. So, say you worked at Putilov Works, okay, your quarters, you lived in a walk up flat, basically right up against the factory. You and tens of thousands of other workers. So, word spread really, really fast. You all went to the tavern, to the pub together. You all worked together. Like you all were right up under each other. So it was very easy to pull a crowd together like this. All you had, like, you have one newspaper. You all gather around during your break, legal or illegal break, and read Pravda, and you argue about it. You debate about it. Like, we need that culture to come back in some way, shape, or form, because that is what welds the proletariat together into a fighting organization. I think that's supposed to be Trotsky. The boys, the Kronstadt sailors, they were basically the shock force of the revolution. They were also heavily anarchist influenced. But Zenith, you said earlier that seeing this footage is surreal because you thought that it was actual footage. I mean, I guess this is the closest that we could get. Because, like I said, like they said at the beginning of this film, most of these actors had actually participated in these events. So I guess you can consider this sort of a heavily dramatized stand-in for what actually happened. Because like everybody, it wasn't like now. Like everybody that participated in the Russian Revolution is long dead. But like this was fresh in people's memory back then. So I guess you could consider it sort of a dramatization, a very close approximation, but still a dramatization of what happened. America really hasn't experienced this yet. I mean, in the 60s, we had riots where, like, the National Guard was out prodding people with bayonets, and in many instances, literally just shooting the fuck out of people. But, like, in Russia back then, going to a protest was gambling with your life. Like, they would literally have a dude with machine guns just open up on you once you got too annoying or once your crowd got too big. America hasn't really experienced this yet in modern times. Ganja Guru 420 says it's funny that they raised the bridges too during 2020 to stop the protests from reaching a magnificent mile. Yeah, it's a I guess it's a good time to discuss counter-revolutionary urban design and urban planning. Like, have you ever wondered that when you look at Paris, like their boulevards are like so wide? Like Paris used to be like a shithole. Like it used to be full of slums narrow, with really narrow, crooked streets. And Paris, to this day, has a reputation for urban uprisings and rebellions. And those narrow streets were extremely easy to barricade. All you had to do was pull up the fucking street and drag carts and stuff, dead horses, whatever you had to your convenience into the middle of the street and stack it up. Boom, you got a barricade. They did this in May of '68. They did this during the Paris Commune. They did this during the fights with the fascists during the uprising that liberated Paris. They did this during the French Revolution. So in the mid 1800s, what happened was they basically redesigned Paris. They built these huge, beautiful avenues, but they serve a military purpose. The military purpose is to so that you could drive. Well, now you would drive tanks, but back then, so that you could run a regiment of cavalry down the streets and send it through the Badlouis, the suburbs, and the arrondissement. I guess that's like the neighborhoods, and yeah, basically fuck up anybody that tries to do anything that they don't want them doing. So reactionaries take into account all this stuff. Yeah, build bridges that you can raise. That's so that um, if need be, if you've got a mob or a crowd of people that's going somewhere that you don't want them to go, all you got to do is raise the bridge up, and they won't be able to go there anymore. So I'm glad you brought that up. Pravda means truth, by the way. So they thought. You can't stop a revolution by throwing copies of Pravda into the river. It's just paper. More could be printed. Oh, that poor Horace. So again, this conscript army um, relates more to workers because up until a few months ago they were workers. Like they're not going to go fight and shoot at people that were their coworkers, people that are their relatives, people that are their friends and drinking buddies. That's why in the Imperial Corps and in the Third World as well, anywhere where there's a major repressive apparatus, they try to professionalize and draw a distinction between the reactionary armed forces and the forces of the people because they do not want that fraternization. They don't want people who are in these apparatuses seeing people that are likely to rebel as being their relatives and friends. They want them being seen as the enemy. Unfortunately, I'm just listening to that. I'm training somebody. Well, enjoy the music. Oh no! Have you all seen his disguise that he wore during this time? Hold on, I'll pull it up. It's too good. Can you tell that's him? I guess if you look at the eyes. Here's another one. Okay, this is from like the actual period of the leading up to the revolution. But like, yeah, I can't see his eyes, but like, yeah. Um, yeah. To survive back then, you had to kind of be a master of disguise and a variety of other things. So, you know, you had fake papers. Sakai in Mao Zedong's Revolutionary Laboratory and the Dangerous Class. Like he actually talks about this. I might do a review of the book in a couple months. I got to give it a reread first. But yeah, the Bolsheviks used a lot of like lumpen tactics and strategy because like they were seen as being criminals. They weren't seen as revolutionaries. They were seen as being no better than criminals. I could tell my boy anywhere. That's because you're an Okrana agent. Oh no! tanks bothered soldiers so much that some of them used elephant rifles. I mean, just put yourself in one of these guys' shoes. If you okay, you've never seen a car before. So you're just, I don't know, British dude, Russian dude, German dude, whatever. You're just a dude chilling in your trees, and then all of a sudden you hear the earth starts shaking under your feet, and you look up and you see this motherfucker with cannons just ablazing, and it's like just treads just rumbling towards you. Like, I think you would be pretty bothered too. No? Oh yeah, you all are reminding me. I need to get some new emotes, emojis, whatever for y'all. Lao salam. So once again, showing the importance of soldiers, like they're literally counter recruiting the Cossacks, the Savage Division. Um, Again, that's why I laugh at people who are like, "Oh, these people can't be organized." Like, you could organize literally everybody. You just have to unite and make propaganda that actually appeals to them, that actually, like the film says, speaks their language. If it doesn't speak their language, they're going to throw it away. If it speaks their language, they're going to want to learn more, and you have to be ready to offer them more before they're ready to fight for you. Land, peace, and bread. Like, that was what the average Russian peasant, Cossack worker, what have you, wanted in 1917. That's what the Bolsheviks promised, and that's what the Bolsheviks delivered. I could see if you're watching this movie as like a little 5 or 6 year old kid. I could see how it could give you nightmares, to be honest. I don't know. Me personally, they gave me the creeps. Some of them. Proletarian, learn to use your rifle. As good a slogan today as it was then. Mauser, Mauser. Oh, look at those bozos. Mensheviki. AKA nerds. Nerds that belong in lockers. Bolshevik literally means majority. Menshevik literally means minority. And what a minority they were. Where are you going with those? Those are illegal. You can't have those. I'm calling the cops. Glad to have you here. This is where you will find me most nights. Unless, of course, I'm sick, which, as the weather continues to get shittier and shittier, will probably happen with increasing frequency. But I will still be here most nights. So they're basically receiving orders to take over like important sites within Petrograd to cripple the bourgeoisie and fuck up their response time. So this was basically an insurrection. I hope I don't get sick either. You know, my fandom is just so wholesome. Like I look at other content creators, um, fandoms, and they're just like some of these people are just fucking toxic pricks. I mean, you all could be toxic pricks, I suppose, if need be, but like some of them just have that as a characteristic of the community. So I really appreciate you all's wholesomeness and concern for the well-being of myself and others. I will be right back. Smoke break. You all continue watching though. There will be a quiz at the end. So this is John Reed's account of the actual taking of the Winter Palace. By this time, in the light that streamed out of all the Winter Palace windows, I could see that the first 200 or 300 men were Red Guards, with only a few scattered soldiers. Over the barricade of firewood we clambered, and leaping down inside, gave a triumphant shout as we stumbled on a heap of rifles thrown down by the Junkers. Junkers were basically like junior officers, who had stood there. On both sides of the main gateway, the doors stood wide open, light streamed out, and from the huge pile came not the slightest sound. Carried along by the eager wave of men, we were swept into the right-hand entrance, opening into a great bare vaulted room, the cellar of the east wing, from which issued a maze of corridors and staircases. A number of huge packing cases stood about, and upon these the Red Guards and soldiers fell furiously, battering them open with the butts of their rifles and pulling out carpets, curtains, linen, porcelain, plates, and glassware. One man went strutting around with a bronze clock perched on his shoulder. Another found a plume of ostrich feathers, which he stuck in his hat. The looting was just beginning when somebody cried, "Comrades, don't take anything. This is the property of the people." Immediately, 20 voices were crying, "Stop! Put everything back! Don't take anything! Property of the people!" Many hands dragged the looters down. The mask and tapestry were snatched from the arms of those who had them. 2 men took away the bronze clock. Roughly and hastily, the things were crammed back in their cases, and self-appointed sentinels stood guard. It was all utterly spontaneous. Through corridors and up staircases, the cry could be heard growing fainter and fainter in the distance. Revolutionary discipline, property of the people. We crossed back over to the left entrance, in the west wing. There, order was also being established. "Clear the palace," bawled a Red Guard, sticking his head through an inner door. "Come, comrades, let's show that we are not thieves and bandits. Everybody out of the palace except the commissars, until we get sentries posted." So, as opposed to a wild bacchanal, an orgy of looting and stealing and drinking and general debauchery, which, granted, sounds fun, but in situations like this, discipline is important. We had, like, orderly discipline. Like, people started looting shit because that's what broke-ass people do when they are confronted with great wealth like that they saw at the Winter Palace. Like, we had order. We had discipline because, like, they weren't here to steal from the Winter Palace. They were here to find a provisional government and arrest it as enemies of the people and traitors to the revolution. So you had the Mensheviks and the SRs. The SRs were the social revolutionaries, um, sort of vague left-ish formation. You had left SRs and you had right SRs. There was actually a left SR, if I recall correctly, who actually shot Lenin. Her name was Fanya Kaplan. And shooting Lenin did not go very well for her. She ended up executed by the Cheka, rightfully so. But her shooting him ended up triggering the strokes that eventually killed him in 1924. So very, very wide array of figures in this revolution. Some good, some not so good. Except for power, all is illusion. That's what kills me with all these like political debates and uh flinging shit at the wall. Like, who is going to be in power? Who is going to be in control? If you are not handling that question, we're not talking about individuals here. We're talking about classes. Like, is the bourgeoisie going to continue to run things? Or are the revolutionary classes, are the workers and peasants going to run things? That is the question on the agenda. Anything else is just academic, intellectual masturbation. Oh no, not a military plot. It shows why these liberals and revisionists are always so afraid of the people, because the people know ultimately what is in their best interests. The revisionists, the opportunists, the reformists, all these other lackeys of the bourgeoisie, as the film so eloquently put it, don't. That's why they conduct their business in secret. That's why they plan their rallies and their protests and their demonstrations and their actions in secret, because they know that if it was submitted to the approval of the people would go for their shit. So it's ironic how people accuse the Bolsheviks of being anti democracy and anti revolutionary and in opposition to the people. But those who are opposed to Bolshevik style methods of organizing generally end up being what they accuse us of being. Not so many. For instance, an intelligent young cadet, formerly private secretary to Milyunov, the cadets were basically like a right wing party within the milieu of the Bolshevik Revolution. Formerly private secretary to Milyukov and to Tereshchenko, drew us aside and told us all about the taking of the Winter Palace. The Bolsheviki were led by German and Austrian officers, he affirmed. Is that so? We replied politely. How do you know? A friend of mine was there and saw them. How could he tell they were German officers? Oh, because they wore German uniforms. So throughout this period, like people were saying that Lenin was a secret German agent because his party, the Bolsheviks, was in opposition to the war. He wanted to pull Russia out of the war. So that bears pretty stark parallels to today when every communist is accused of being either a Russian or a Chinese agent, which is hilarious because, like, even those of us who do support Russia and China, for whatever stupid reasons that we do, like, we're not receiving any pay from these governments. They don't just go around and hand out money to random Americans to promote their line on the internet. So most of these online Wumao are doing it of their own accord. Wumao and Vatniks. Eisenstein is a master of suspense. Imagine living in a house with 1,100 fucking rooms. So yeah, here we hear this myth again. The Bolsheviks are secretly German provocateurs, a dagger in the heart of our holy motherland. Of course, it was bullshit. Um, but people who see their order collapsing before their very eyes tend to believe the most idiotic of things. Just like the Democrats couldn't acknowledge that Trump won because the Democrats in 2016 ran a horrible candidate, they had to gin up some nonsensical myth about Russia interfering in the election, and they've been mauling about this for almost a decade now. So, losers believe any fucking thing. Everyone who was against Biden is a Russian spy, precisely. No, people are against Biden because Biden fucking sucks. He's a liar and he hasn't done anything of importance or good for the country. Like he's lied about everything that he said he was going to do. He's done absolutely nothing to improve the quality of life of the people that he's been entrusted to lead. So he's probably going to end up being the Jimmy Carter of the 21st century. Biden is older now than Jimmy Carter was when he was president, so yeah, he's probably not going to be around all that much longer. That's the question that they always ask communists. How do you propose to seize power? What are you going to do once you get it? Let's see. DSA meetings were more like this, I might feel compelled to attend more of them. Well, this speech could have been given yesterday. We must try to settle this sad misunderstanding peacefully, without fighting, without bloodshed. Okay, when history is being made, Lenin said that sometimes decades can happen in a week. So when you got a whole motherfucking decade happening in a week and you're talking this shit without fighting, without bloodshed, first of all, it's cowardly. And then second of all, like it shows that you have a piss poor understanding of history. Like, unfortunately, bloodshed and fighting is what moves history forward. It was bloodshed and fighting that freed my people. It was bloodshed and fighting that led to the creation of this country. It was bloodshed and fighting that led to the creation of the Soviet Union. It was bloodshed and fighting that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So, unfortunately, wars are kind of what propel history forward. Our goal is to ensure that our team, the proletariat, wins. So this didn't happen. There was no shootout at the Winter Palace, but it's good. It's good cinema. Hold on. Let me see if I can find this scene. I know exactly where this scene is in 10 Days That Shook the World. It is hilarious. So the Committee for Salvation of the Revolution is basically just a bunch of old ass dudes trying to prevent the Bolsheviks from seizing power. Let me find it. I couldn't find it, but basically, those old men tried to break through a blockade that was set up by red sailors on the road to the Winter Palace. And they were like, "Are you guys going to shoot us?" And the sailors were like, "No, we're not going to shoot you." And he was like, "Let us through." He's like, "No, we have orders to not let you through." And eventually, it like devolved into a shoving match until finally one of the big sailors was like, "You know what? We'll spank you and we'll shoot you too. Now, fuck off." Funny. Again, this did not happen. This is embellishment for the purpose of cinema. It's still a dope scene, though. So that's the Winter Palace wine cellar. I believe it was one of the largest in Russia, if not the largest in Russia. Um, if you've never heard of the wine pogrom, I'm going to tell you what the wine pogrom was. Because these are Russians, so they like a drink or several. Um, but Lenin did not particularly like that. So you had the wine pogroms. Yeah, I'm not subscribing to that. Basically, undisciplined workers and deserters and soldiers broke into the wine cellars under the Winter Palace and drank all the fucking wine. And I think somebody had to set up machine guns to stop them from tearing up fucking Leningrad. Well, it was still Petrograd at the time, but yeah. That's why discipline is extremely important. You cannot make revolution with a bunch of drunks. Well, they're starting the wine pogrom. They're stealing all the wine from the fucking Tsar's wine cellar. Comrades, the workers' and peasants' revolution, which the Bolsheviks have always deemed necessary, has been won. We must now set about building a proletarian socialist state in Russia. So that's pretty much it. Good film, very advanced cinematography wise for its time. Um, Obviously, it was Soviet propaganda, but I would consider it probably the closest we could get to the I guess to the live streaming of the Bolshevik Revolution. So overall, good film. I'm gonna be watching more of Sergei Eisenstein. I really like this. I watched it once a long, long time ago, but watching it with you people is made it all the more special. So